Geek. Talking baseball every week. Cause they're Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and the Geek. And then there was one.
Our last, I suspect, our last pre-clinch episode of the season.
I would hope so. It's certainly our last pre-clinch free episode of the season. We should mention, if you want to get even more Gleeman and the Geek, you can always check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman, where we will, on Monday, talking about the clinching and Aaron being soaked in champagne. And
beer. I don't think they'll waste the champagne on me. It'll probably be the High Life or whatever.
Right.
Miller Lite.
And John also probably being soaked in champagne, but not by the twins, just from chugging champagne.
From a Friday night. That's just a Friday night in this bonus household.
Exactly.
You guys get wild with it. Yeah. A lot of things very similar. I come in here and you guys have all the walls covered in like plastic tarps. It's very weird. I wonder what goes on. But I don't want to ask too many questions.
No, you do not.
Because I really don't want the answers. The Twins' magic number, we're recording this at 9 a.m. Friday morning, as we usually do. And the Twins' magic number is 1. It got a little more complicated than it had been in terms of figuring out the clinch scenarios, just because Cleveland has been so bad
that
they've dropped
caught them
to Detroit's level.
Yeah, right.
And then that means that the magic number doesn't change.
Right.
But it means that, for instance, the Twins had Thursday off,
right,
which was odd. And Cleveland and Detroit both played with the magic number at 1. Now, 3 days earlier, we thought, well, if Cleveland loses that game, the Twins will clinch weirdly, anticlimactically on their off day. But because they dropped to the same level as Detroit, to get that 1 would have required actually 2 losses, which is Cleveland needed to lose to eliminate themselves, and then Detroit would have needed to lose last night.
Yeah, you have a magic number with every team.
Yes,
it's a different magic number with every team, except this time, and the only one you ever pay attention to is the one that's closest to
one,
you, right? But this time we've got a magic number of 1 with Cleveland, and we've got a magic number of 1 with Detroit.
Right.
And as a result, if the Twins win, both magic numbers drop 1 more, and then it's 0. Or if the Twins lose tonight, alternately, Cleveland and Detroit would both have to lose to drop both of those numbers to 0.
It's annoying is all it is, really. It's just like...
especially because Detroit's playing on the West Coast.
Yeah, Detroit played Oakland. Cleveland won at 9 p.m. or something.
Right, yes.
And then, although they tried not to, they blew a lead, but they came back and won. And once that happened, then the Twins knew they weren't going to clinch last night, which... you want to clinch, I guess, just get it done so that you eliminate any possibility of, you go 0-9 down the stretch. I mean, who knows? There's a 0.000% percent chance or whatever. But, I think it's, if you know you're going to clinch, and realistically they know they're going to clinch, it's not up for really debate, you'd rather do it at home.
Sure.
Right? I mean, why not? It's a fun thing. Not only I suspect there'll be a decent crowd there tonight, or more than there would have been, for a normal Angels game at this point on a Friday night. And everybody can see, hopefully, it'd be nice to clinch with a win also.
Right.
You get to celebrate.
And if they don't clinch with a win...
yeah, then it's going to be tricky because, once again, Detroit is on the West Coast.
Right.
And so I'm very curious to see what happens if the Twins were to just randomly lose today.
I think you're going to be up past your bedtime.
I think I'm going to not care. I think Dan's in town, and Dan's going to have a lovely time sitting in that press box until midnight. I will be fast asleep. But yeah, so it gets a little tricky. But they can make it a moot point by just winning tonight.
Right, exactly.
The moment the Twins win, they clinch. That's the 1 in the magic number of 1. I can post my Junior Ortiz picture and close down that file on my computer for until next season. And we can...
hopefully, next season.
Yeah, well, a magic number. I just mean the magic number.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully we'll care about a magic number next year.
Yeah. Right. Until a future season.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's and also the Guardians, beyond just getting swept in Kansas City and generally not playing well for 5 months now, they basically waved the white flag in an even bigger way beyond just their on-field performance by waving. They waved the white flag by waving Matt Moore, who was a lefty reliever that they claimed off waivers.
One of the 3 guys they got
a month
from
ago
the Angels.
From the Angels. Right. They got Ronaldo Lopez and Matt Moore relievers, and then Lucas Giolito, a starting pitcher. And the reason they did that, they sort of jumped the line. Because they had a below 500 record at the time and still do, they had waiver priority over all the real contenders.
Right.
And I think at that point their playoff odds were like 8%. I know it was single digits at that point. The Twins were 90-something%. And we talked at the time, we'll give them a little credit for at least spending a couple $1,000,000 when they really didn't have to, and give it one last, death rattle shot at this thing. Now, it runs counter to what they did at the trade deadline, which is when they shed payroll and traded their shortstop and a starting pitcher and their DH. But, whatever. Then it turns out, those 3 additions didn't really help them. I mean, Lopez has been quite good.
Right.
Giolito's been terrible, including his first start. That was basically the division right there. He gives up 9 runs against the Twins. And Moore's been, fine. But they made no real positive impact collectively of the 3. And then for whatever reason, I suspect just to save, $400,000 or whatever his remaining salary is, the Guardians just waived him with like 2 weeks left. He's not even eligible for the playoffs, obviously. The Marlins claimed him, and I'll give the Marlins credit because they've been known as a cheap organization too. They paid $400,000 for 2 weeks of a reliever that they couldn't even use in the playoffs just to try to get a wild card spot.
Listen, if you want to get a good reliever, this is the time to get a good reliever. Why not? So these are high leverage games, and he's a high leverage reliever.
I know it's easy to kick a rival when they're down. And
so we will a little bit.
And so I will. Yeah, thank you. And a lesser man or a better man would not, but I'm not a better man. But
I wonder if they'll think about waiving Lopez.
I don't know why.
I would suggest they could or Giolito. I'm not sure that anybody would pick up Giolito. Like nobody would actually pick it up.
To me, it's weird. Why only Moore? I haven't seen anything. I mean, maybe that's been reported. I wonder if Matt Moore was like, "Can I leave? Like this is I'm not interested in this. What are we doing?"
Right.
I don't know him as a personality, so I have no clue if that's what happened. But it's. For as bad as the Twins' collapse was last year, and believe me, we podcasted through it.
Yeah,
it was bad. Cleveland's has been almost as bad on the field, and then I would argue this is like embarrassing. And also, Francona's clearly retiring, even though he won't say it. And so this is his send off. Is a team that just has no fight in it whatsoever. And the front office traded 3 guys at the deadline, and then they claimed guys, and then they waived them. And it's like,
and I mean, they've had some injuries. But not like the Twins had injuries last year.
They lost Bieber and McKenzie. Right. They haven't had the number of injuries, but
they've had some high
end guys. Bieber's back today, I think. Which welcome back, buddy. You guys are about to lose the division. So yeah, I don't know. It's a rough way for Cleveland to.
Is Bieber going to start the game for them today?
I don't know. I know he's just being activated. He might.
I mean, I don't know why you'd activate him before he actually is going to start.
Yeah, maybe it's not literally today. I just saw the thing. He's coming back off the aisle. He's been out since June, I want to say, something like that. So the wild card picture then is, it's okay. So 2 things are, the magic number's still 1. So technically the division's still in play.
Bieber is starting today.
Yeah. So there you go, buddy. He can lose it's probably not going to matter. Well, I think if the Twins just win. Right. But we can be done with Cleveland. We don't have to think about them till.
What about the Tigers, though?
Next spring, same thing.
You don't want to break down the Tigers' moves?
No, I don't. Weigh all those moves, all those big high impact moves. But the 2 things that now become of interest, obviously, one that's been of interest is who are the Twins going to play in the first round? Mm-hmm. Who's going to be the 6th seed? Who's the 3rd wild card, which is the 6th overall seed? And we've been saying now for roughly 3 weeks. Give it another week, and then it'll clear itself up, and we can actually start to compare and contrast.
It is not clearing itself up.
It's not clearing itself up at all. It's muddier than it's ever been. All 4 teams now, I believe, are within a game of each other.
I think that's right.
Houston's up.
They're all within half a game of each other.
Right.
They're all within half a game of each other. Right. Houston is ahead of Seattle and Texas in the Western Division
by a half game.
And Toronto is tied with Houston.
Right. So we have no clue how that's going to work out. And eventually, like this time next week, if it's still the same way, we'll just talk about all 4 teams. I would like to only talk about, let's say, 2 teams or ideally 1 team.
Right.
But we'll figure that out. But it's interesting in that then from that, because Houston is only a half game up, and they've been really kind of slumping here, or at least kind of limping to the finish line. I just assumed they would take control of the division once they got up by a couple games a few weeks ago, but they haven't. Well, then it's like, well, could Twins actually get the number 2 seed and get a bye.
Did you see my thread on this?
Yes,
yesterday?
I did. And also Doe. I'm going to read you a text from Doe. Doe,
I love this.
Doe, who's a even bigger nerd probably than you. He presents less nerdy than you.
Well, that's true. But he doesn't wear it on his sleeve,
right? Because he's young and good looking.
Yes,
so
exactly.
he seems like he's not
good haircut now.
Yeah, he's got like a full head of good hair, and he wears like somewhat stylish clothing.
Yeah, he doesn't have the dad nerd vibe.
Yeah, I don't have it. But he emailed. I can't find it. But we had too many texts last night talking about that Cleveland but he basically texts all the other beat writers, and he says, "I've been working on a spreadsheet," which he's the king of spreadsheets. He has more spreadsheets than you and me combined, which I never thought possible. And he says, "I've been working on a spreadsheet of all the AL West possibilities." Like he literally mapped out every outcome of every remaining game and what the Twins would have to do, because the tricky part of...
I did this in 2020.
Yes. So he sent us the spreadsheet, and then everyone in the group chat just went, "Go away, you nerd." Nobody was interested.
Well, tell him send me the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Honest to God, no.
But we were like, yeah,
who else cares about that spreadsheet other than me?
And
he's sending it to you guys to annoy you. If he sent it to me, I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, well, you guys can nerd out together. And I said, after he laid out all the scenarios and he showed his work and he did all this, and he said, I've concluded it's really unlikely. And I said, well, yeah, Fangraphs has him at 0.3 for percent. I could have saved you the time on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And he goes, no, but it was for my own edification. I really wanted.
That's why I did it, because I did the same thing. Like somebody was posting, that the Twins were 4 games back of Houston, and I know they have the tiebreaker versus Houston.
But it's not as easy as that.
But yeah, 2 weeks ago we took a look at it as well and said, yeah, the problem is that there's also 2 other teams that said, well, we're kind of working through it. And I said, I wonder if that's changed at all. So I went through and took a look at what the factors are, and there's 2 bad factors, right? The first is that while, Houston is 4 games ahead, Seattle and Texas are both 3 games ahead.
People always underestimate, whether it's within your own division or just looking at a playoff picture in general like this, the impact of multiple teams being ahead of you. Because people always look at the team at the top and go, well, we're only 3 games behind them with 10 to play.
And implicit in that we only have to catch that team is either we're going to get on fire or they're going to flail.
Right. But
or
when
both.
there are 3 teams
ahead of you, you're looking for 3 teams to flail. And the second problem is those 3 teams are playing each other over the next 9 games. Yeah. Seattle only faces Texas and Houston the rest of the way.
Right.
And Texas and Houston also face each other during that time. So of the 29 games those 3 teams have left, like 20 of them are versus each other. Right. And so you can't have 3 teams. It's hard to have 3 teams flail because when one team flails, the other one's going to pick up games.
Right, exactly. And so I think, what it turns out is you can either look at Doe. By the way, when I say Doe, I realize we treat a lot of people like they're characters on the show.
Joe Young Park, the beat writer for the
MLB.com.
Right, yes.
You can either look through all his scenarios or you can just go on Fangraphs or Baseball Reference and see 0.3%. And I don't want to stop people from scoreboard watching the AL West teams and stuff. Go ahead.
If it was just Houston, I guarantee you Fangraphs would have it at a lot less than 0.3%. But what Fangraphs what Fangraphs does is actually plays out the season like 1,000 times and kind of assigns probabilities of this sort of thing happening. And the problem is just you've got to thread a terrific needle. First of all, the minimum the Twins can go is 7-2 over those last 9 games.
Well, for this to even be any possibility.
And even then, there's one scenario where that happens. Like the problem 29 games have to break exactly right.
Because they play each other.
Right.
And because the Twins don't hold the tiebreaker over all of them. Mm-hmm. So a tie with them.
They have the tiebreaker versus Houston and Texas, but not versus Seattle.
You need not just the win total to end up a certain way, but you need them to get there in a specific way.
Right.
And so you need not just, this team needs to go 3-6 while the Twins go 7-2 or whatever it is, but you need them to go 3-6, but those 3 have to be specific wins and those 6 have to be specific losses. And so you add all that up. But, it's fine to pay attention to it. I'm not telling you can't do that.
Yeah, there's a 1% scenario out there.
Plan on being at Target Field or watching the Twins on TV
on October 3rd.
On October 3rd, I'm going to guess it's about 11 a.m., but I don't know that. But
plan on going to a pregame party at the Poorhouse before October 3rd. I will just give you guys.
I'll not be doing that.
I will. I have not put those details out there. I will probably put the details out there Monday, but I will just give you guys a heads up. We are going to be doing Twins Daily's going to be doing some pregame parties with lots of fun activities.
Can't wait to see that crew at about 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning pregame.
Oh my God,
it's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be wonderful. So
you know what's good for morning pregame parties? Jello shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, smart. Always, yeah. Jello's healthy for you, right?
Sure. There's always room for Jello.
And then if you do like potato vodka, that's got like starches and stuff.
Sure. It's got starches.
I don't know. What else has potato got in it?
Kind of like hash browns.
Yeah, that's right. It's like a breakfast. It's really like a breakfast burrito in a lot of ways.
Right.
It's like having jam on a breakfast.
Yeah, that's right.
Really, if you break it down. So the Twins are at 81 wins right now, with 9 games left. Those 9 games are the Angels, who have just completely gone in the tank. No Trout, no Ohtani. Right. They waived half their roster. They're doing shenanigans with the roster to try to
somehow they swept Cleveland. Did they sweep Cleveland?
3 out of 4 from Cleveland.
Was 3 out of 4? Yeah, all right.
So it's Angels here for 3. Oakland A's here for 3, which Oakland's been the worst or second worst team in baseball the whole season.
Yes.
And then
who Detroit's facing right now.
Right. And then the final series of the season, annoyingly, is a one-off 3-game road trip to Colorado to face the Rockies, who are, I believe, the worst team in the National League and have been all season. So that's about as easy. I mean, that is almost literally as easy a schedule as you could finish with in terms of 9 games. And it's so easy. We didn't think the Angels would be quite this bad, but I certainly didn't think the Angels would be good. Oakland and Colorado were projected to be terrible, and they're terrible. Yes. It's such a...
I just looked. Colorado is 10.5 games worse than St. Louis, who's the second worst team in the National League.
The NL is much less stratified, I guess.
I mean, that's bad.
Yeah. Colorado's just terrible.
It's killing me we're not going to Colorado.
But so it's such an easy final stretch that as soon as the schedule came out, like last winter or whatever...
Right.
Or even last end of the season, we were like, oh, wow, that is interesting in a couple ways. Right. One, the Twins don't finish with any Central teams. Right. And then their last matchup against Central teams was that series in Chicago, which was 15 games out of the, till the end, which is very odd. And then they finished with a National League team, which is very odd. They've played a lot of National League teams.
At the time, we thought Cincinnati was going to be pretty bad, too. So Cincinnati looked like they were also in that stretch. It looked
like the Mets were going to be pretty good and the White Sox were going to be pretty good.
That's right, yeah.
So the end schedule. Right. But we saw this, and this is part of the reason that even when the Twins at the All-Star break or early in the second half were kind of back and forth with Cleveland and not looking great in terms of like playoff odds, we kept saying if they can get to mid-September, they're not going to get passed from behind or even, equal.
Right.
Like they're not – Cleveland is not, or whoever, is not going to surge ahead because this is as easy a schedule as you can drop. Well, it's been a moot point, obviously, because Cleveland is not catching anybody – I was going to make a STD joke. I won't.
I was about to go the
I have
same
more
way.
Class than that. And also I couldn't think of a great joke to make, so I won't. But it does make it interesting for a team that has really nothing to play for here, the Twins, other than just try to get as healthy as you can, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about because that is the dominant storyline yet again for the 400th consecutive week. It's injury updates. But, if this stretch were games they needed to win, I would say 6-3 is probably a decent projection.
I would hope
here.
so.
In which case you end up with 87 wins. Yeah. But they might get real weird, especially with like the pitching in Colorado. I don't know that we're going to see, much of anything. I think we're going to see some tryouts basically for Chris Paddack and whoever.
Right.
You might see Bailey Ober start a game or something, but you're not going to see anybody that they're going to want to pitch in the playoffs start messing around in Colorado. Maybe the first game of that series, but not the last 2 games of that series. So who knows? I mean, they can beat these teams with their B or C squads, obviously, and there's only 28 guys on the roster, so it's not like you can pull up the whole Saints roster for this thing or anything. But it would be nice just from a sort of, fandom morale standpoint if the Twins could, let's say, finish with the same win total as the last wild card team. You know what I mean? Or
Sure.
Let me put it this way. They don't even need to do that. Finish with more wins than a 4th wild card team would have finished with. so that you can at least say
Yeah, I see.
6 teams made the playoffs and they had one of the top 6 win totals in the American League.
I guess.
You know what I mean? So that the division, well, the division did aid their win total, if you really want to get technical about it. It'd be nice to finish with one of the top 6 records, or at least tied for one of the top 6 records in a league where 6 make the playoffs.
Sure.
Just from a, well, let's say the Blue Jays missed the playoffs, but they had 2 more wins than the Twins, and then you just got to hear about that. It'd be nice. I think that's within reason as a possibility. But, there are 2 or 3 wins behind everyone in that quest, although, like you said, the schedules for those teams get kind of...
they're 9 games over 500 now. They go 6-3. They finish 12 games over 500. That's
87,
87 wins. That's a little more reasonable.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a normal total under this playoff format to make the
Sauce
playoff.
just cares that they get 3 more. Beat the over.
They're going to hit the
80,
over.
83.5. They got to go at least 3-6 over these last 9
I'm
games.
confident of that. I think they'll get to that before they get to the road trip, or the last road
Before they
series
get to
round.
Colorado?
Yeah. I mean,
they'll win 3 of the next 6.
yeah, I think so.
All
Let's see. I had one other. Oh, Rocco Baldelli, his wife Allie, had the twin baby boys named Nino and Enzo Baldelli. Seems like they're all doing well. I'm assuming he'll be back tonight managing, but I don't know that for sure.
Right.
Jace Tingler obviously managed this last road trip. I would tell him if we were just, sitting at a bar stool somewhere, feel free to stay home for a few more days. These games don't matter.
He probably wants to be around for the clinch.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's
right.
True. Yeah, that's a fair point.
He's gonna be there tonight.
Yeah. He might need a beer or two after what I'm assuming he's seen and done over the last week or so. And his wife might need a beer or two too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where he's at. And then you mentioned this, but before we start with the news and notes section of the show, we would John and I were talking about what playoff stuff and planning out how are we going to handle post-game episodes on the Patreon and all this. I mean, we're definitely going to do at least an episode after every playoff game.
I would think so.
Either if it's a day game, we'll certainly do it that night.
Right.
If it's a night game, we'll either do it super late night or very early the next morning.
Yep.
We're going to have some extra preview episodes probably once, again, assuming we get an idea at some point who they're going to play.
Right.
It's all on Patreon. It's exclusive to Patreon supporters / subscribers. It's Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. When we put out a new episode, you'll be billed $1. If we don't put out an episode on a day or a week or a month, you don't get billed. You only get billed when new episodes come out.
Correct.
You can cancel anytime. You can join us for this little stretch run in the playoffs and then reconsider at that point. That's fine.
Did you mention the ad free?
It's commercial free, hour plus episodes. We tend to do kind of deeper dives. We also do mailbags. We probably will have some guests on during this playoff run because everybody will be in town, obviously.
Right.
I think if you enjoy this show and you find yourself between Friday episodes saying, yeah, well, this news broke or this interesting game happened, I'd like to hear them talk about this. We typically do Monday and Wednesday episodes at minimum exclusively for the Patreon subscribers. And then during the playoffs, we're going to be stacking those, because they're going to be fun to do, win or lose.
Right.
There'll be
Well,
all
I
kinds
don't
of
know
stuff
if
to
they'll
talk
be fun
about.
to do, lose,
Interesting to do, win or lose. And so
We will overreact for sure, either way.
we would like to get to 4,000 subscribers on the Patreon
3,849 as of
right
this
now.
second.
So we need 150. We need 151.
So tell your friends.
Yeah, it seems like
Or try it yourself.
good little round number. And if you've been on the fence, I can tell you that if you sign up today, first of all, you get access to the entire archive for free, which is hundreds of episodes, all the interviews we've done, all the old stuff we've done. And if you sign up today and you stick with us through the playoff run, the minimum is probably $5 that you might spend.
Right.
The maximum, it might be, I don't know, $12, $18, but I can tell you'd be thrilled to spend those $12 or $18.
Yes, exactly.
Because that means they're in the ALCS or in the World
that's
Series
it,
or something like that. And so, we would love to have you, at least 150 of you. It's a nice round number. I mean, look, here's the truth of it. 38, what are we, 38.49 you
That's
just
what I
said?
said.
I mean, that's threefold what our sort of most optimistic initial.
That is eightfold.
Yeah, I mean,
our most optimistic.
Even
It's
a couple
almost-
years ago, though, we were
Right,
like,
yeah,
if we can
right.
get to 2,000, that'd be amazing. If we can get to 2,500, so 4,000 is incredible, and it we just we puff our chests out a little bit. But it would also, you guys have through this show, the Friday show, but especially through the Patreon show, which is we kind of view it as our little private club.
Right.
Once in a while, I curse a little too often, probably than once in a while.
Not so much.
But
though.
you guys have turned it really into something we couldn't have imagined, to the point that, for me at least, it allows me to view other jobs or other opportunities in a different way.
Yes,
because I can
exactly.
always just say to myself, well, we could just do the podcast. That's fun, right? So we would love to have you sign up. It's Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. Sign up, join us for these last 9 regular season games and into the playoffs. I promise you will enjoy them, win or lose. Yeah, okay. So let's do a Royce thing, and then we'll do an ad, and we'll talk about some of the deeper issues. But just the only reason I want to do the Royce thing up top, it's obviously on everyone's mind, but also there's only so much we can really offer
We'll
here.
know a lot more later today.
Right. I mean, we're hours away from finding out how bad it is, how good it is, or at least some sense of what the injury is. He got an MRI like 36 hours ago when he got back in town. I haven't heard anything either way. I'm not even going to speculate, because why speculate? By the time some people listen to this, the news will have come out, obviously. I'm assuming we'll get a chance to actually talk to Royce tonight. And if not, we'll certainly talk to Nick Paparesta and get the details on the diagnosis. But, the good news is, it wasn't a knee injury.
Right.
In the moment, I was like, did he just tear his ACL?
He also wasn't re-injuring the groin that he had, 4 to 6.
Oblique.
Absolutely
saying-
oblique.
you keep saying groin.
Good, yeah, 4 to 6 weeks.
You need, just in general, and this was true even before this injury, you need to stop always thinking about Royce Lewis's groin.
Well,
I think it would really help you.
it's a
Just in life. I know Chrissy actually wanted me to talk to
It
you
is
about
a
this.
pleasant thought.
Oh, you're not on the morning show, John. That's the thing. Yeah. So and the other good news is it's the other leg,
Right.
and so
Yes.
it's a hamstring strain, which is not great generally.
Yes.
But
Can be a pain in the butt to come back
yes.
from.
But
almost
even if
literally.
it were a hamstring on that same leg where he's had the 2 ACLs, you'd go, well, this leg is
Right.
having difficulty.
Right.
Well, it's the other leg. And so the problem with hamstrings, and this is the only speculation that I'm going to offer, because like I said, it's pointless to get that far into it. But the problem with that soft tissue injury, which a hamstring injury is, even a very minor hamstring strain, if it's more than just a little tweak and you're fine, if it's any sort of grade fill-in-the-blank strain,
Right.
you're looking at 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
And you're looking at an IL stint. It's not, I mean, we talked about this with
Right.
Michael Taylor
Right.
earlier this month. It's not generally
And Michael
something-
Taylor's seemed like it was very mild right from the beginning. He was
Right.
still, he still put on the IL.
Right. And especially for a guy like Royce Lewis, he's got to play third base. He's got to run. You can't just do Ed Julian has to play second base occasionally. But Ed Julian's had a hamstring problem for several weeks, and you see the impact, which is he just jogs.
Right.
And also his hitting hasn't been as great as it was early in the season. The other issue, so even a 2-week injury, because we're at this point of the season, 2 weeks you're into that's the playoff, the first round at least.
Yeah, first round of the playoffs is over in 2 weeks from today. Right.
And so that's the difficulty there. I mean, they're going to need a clean diagnosis for him to be in the lineup for game 1 of a playoff series, basically. They're going to need it's just a very minor, not even a strain, just, tweaked it. Is that possible? Sure. That would be amazing. The other issue, even beyond just the 3-game series in the opening round, is if it's even just kind of a middle tier hamstring strain, that can often be 3 to 6 weeks.
Right.
And so then that's it. His season is over at that point. And so it sucks. I mean, obviously it sucks for the team. He's just been hugely valuable. I mean, honestly, he has an argument for being the most valuable position player in the team, even though he played 57 games out of 162 or whatever it was. But the timing of it is just brutal. I mean, we were talking on a couple Patreons ago about how, to get to the finish line healthy. And we were like, well, there's 2 weeks left. Let's see if that even is true.
Yep.
It's not true. Correa also got hurt, which we'll talk about in a second, or has been hurt, kind of re-aggravated his plantar fasciitis.
And is
but
on the IL.
the problem when you get hurt now is there's no window to come back.
That's right.
Any minor injury, even the lowest grade hamstring strain is 2 weeks, and there's only 2 weeks left. So that's really unfortunate timing. And then obviously, last but not least, is just given all that Royce Lewis has been through already from a health and development standpoint, and for him to come back from back-to-back years ended by a torn ACL, which is a huge injury for a speed-based player especially, then to both times come right out of the gates hot and look like an impact player immediately, and then the first time re-injure the ACL, and then the second time he's a few weeks into looking like a star, this season, and he strains his oblique, or as John likes to call it, his groin, and misses, a month plus. And guess what? That doesn't slow him down either. He comes back from that, and he's been one of the best players in all baseball, in the 6 weeks since then. And then he can see the finish line of a great rookie season. He's gotten to the point where he's the number 3 hitter on a playoff-bound team. People are going nuts for him. He's quickly becoming a huge fan favorite, which is absolutely rightfully so, on and off the field. And he's thinking about starting a playoff game, which he's probably been dreaming about for 15, 20 years. And then, boom, you just... he's been playing through a heel injury unrelated to that, and he strains his hamstring, and it's all in question. I mean, and he said this, if anybody's equipped to handle it, it's him.
Sure.
Just from a mentality or positivity standpoint. I mean, I'll never forget, we talked to him after he tore his second ACL. And he was like, don't feel sorry for me. I've already been through this once. I know I can do it. And he's right about that. But at some point, I just worry, will this sap the positivity out of the guy? Is this just... I don't know. So, again, hopefully the news will be good when we hear it tonight or in a few hours. In terms of what their approach would be if he's out, it gets a little tricky. I mean, you could just do something as simple as playing Willie Castro at third base, which I don't think is the end of the world. I think he's fine there defensively. Sure. I think, obviously he's not going to replace Royce Lewis in terms of production offensively, but But
the last time they lost Lewis, they relied on Polanco at third base, right?
Right. I'm wondering about that, particularly because Julian is still banged up. Right. And I didn't think Polanco looked that great at third. It was limited opportunities, obviously. Sure. And I don't know that they want to go into a playoff series with Julian at second and Polanco at third, especially if Correa is limited at short. Right. That's not – I certainly would be willing to sacrifice – offense for defense to get a better infield alignment than that. Maybe. I think that's pretty bad.
The real issue there is that I don't necessarily know who's going to be the DH then, where our good DH bat is even coming from.
We'll talk about Buxton here in a minute. Right. But yes, that's also an issue too. And so you could go with Castro at third, just say he's the starting third baseman, and that's fine. I mean, we've seen the impact Willie Castro has made offensively, defensively as a base runner, although it is nice to have him strategically as a button you can push off the bench in the middle of games, because then you can pick and choose.
Right.
You can pinch run him in a key spot. You can pinch hit him for a bottom of the order guy. You can use him after you pinch run or pinch hit for other people or with other people to then give you plenty of defensive flexibility to still trot out a good fielding alignment out there. Now, you can also just start him at third base and hope he has some big hits and plays good defense and runs when he's on base, and that's fine too. The other options there that seem obvious are, Solano could play third, although Solano against lefties is already kind of slotted in at first base, most likely, or Farmer could play third.
Right.
Farmer now for the next week or so is probably going to be playing shortstop, though,
right? Yes,
because Correa has been placed on the IL. Yep. Now Correa seems pretty confident that he's going to be back for the playoffs, in which case that would free up Farmer to play third. So yeah, I mean, I think you could go back to Polanco at third with Julian at second. You could just play Castro at third. You could play Farmer at third. You could play Solano at third. Those are all not horrible options, but they're just not Royce. They're just not Royce Lewis. And then the other option that I know people inevitably go to is, what if they just called up Brooks Lee?
Right.
Like, what if you lose one top prospect and you just call up the next top prospect?
He's a top prospect, but he's not a top prospect that's thriving at AAA right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's been fine. He's held his own at AAA. He was promoted there, I don't know, a month and a half ago or something like that. But he's hitting, 240.
Right.
Drawing some walks, hitting for a little power. But he's not, just on performance alone, he's not exactly banging down the door for a promotion. Austin Martin has been much better, actually, at AAA. and Austin Martin played third base in college, but I don't know that
Austin Martin had an arm injury also for most
true,
of the,
and
most
also
of the
doesn't
season.
have a great arm to begin with. I think second and center and left are more his bag. So I think you would see them kind of piece together Castro, Farmer, Solano in some order in the playoffs, which again, that's a lot better than a lot of teams' backup plans for this in this type of situation, especially this late in the season. Although that then depletes the depth that has been so valuable to the Twins in terms of mixing and matching with in-game moves. Because if Farmer's starting at third base, you can't pinch hit Farmer against the lefty. If Castro's starting at third base, you can't bring Castro off the bench to pinch run for somebody and on and on. So that's where they're at with Royce. Before we get into the other injury updates, our third, fourth, fifth, sixth,
Most of which are a little more positive. I think.
No, not really.
We've got some people coming back. Let's talk a little bit about places to go before the game or after the game or just any other time.
Or during if it goes really bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've done that as well.
Right
this
out.
particular place.
Yeah.
Listen, Bricksworth Beer Company is a place, I don't know if you know, it's not one of the places that's been around Target Field for very long, but the space has been. It's in the old Darby's where they've got that great patio right along the railroad tracks there. And I have been spending a lot of time there because they have got unbelievably good pizza and they're Bricksworth Beer Company. Like they are brewers. They are the same family as Blackstack, which is known as award-winning, especially with their hazy IPAs, beers. And it's, 2 blocks from Target Field.
Yeah. Also just,
great place.
burgers and pub food, but Detroit-style pizza, which I like a lot.
The rectangular pizzas are so good that, in fact, they ranked number 1 in Minnesota for the Detroit-style pizza category by the Washington Post. So
just Google Bricksworth, follow the signs to their patio or indoor space also, or you can go to they have a Burnsville location.
Yeah, if you can't make it downtown for any of the games, don't forget to watch the games at the Burnsville location.
Bricksworth Beer Company in North Loop in the old Darby space. Go check it out pre and post game for Twins games.
My goodness.
And then Stamps.com, which here's how Stamps.com works. Nobody likes to go to the post office. I think even people who work at the more than any, don't want to go to the post office.
Sure, right.
And I speak from experience because several years ago I had a book out and I had the bright idea of offering signed copies of the book. And I thought,
you received a whole bunch of free copies of your own book.
Yes,
right.
they send you a bunch of boxes of it.
Right.
And I said, well, maybe 40, 50 people will want this. And it sold, 800 or something like that right away.
Now Aaron has a problem.
Now I'm a processing and shipping plant in my 1,000-square-foot apartment. So I thought, well, I don't want to live at the post office because this would be every day I'd be there with 12 more books in line. But then someone turned me on to Stamps.com, which we are now doing to you. And it was incredibly easy. Not only can you print your own postage, but you can be more precise with the postage because as part of this deal, they will send you a little scale that you can literally weigh. So you don't have to pay extra to just slap 8 stamps on or whatever. You can get the precise postage. And then also what helped me was you can then track each individual item you are shipping so that you know when it actually gets delivered, which is key if you're sending out hundreds and hundreds of books or whatever.
And you can get it with the holidays coming up. You've got a business. Now is the time to start investigating this stuff so you're ready to go. Get your business ready for the holiday rush. Get started with Stamps.com today. You just sign up with the promo code GEEK. Now, usually we use the promo code Gleeman, but we're going to use the promo code GEEK this time for a special offer. And that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page. You see a little microphone has podcast, and enter the code GEEK.
Okay.
Give me some positive injury news, Mr. Gleeman.
Wow. I don't know. Correa's foot didn't fall off. That's about all I got on that. Well, the problem with the positive ones is it's all relievers. Like we can talk about that, but I'm not going to talk about that before.
Prior to this week, that was our biggest concern of the team going.
John, but if someone who worked for Twins Daily said we have 3 articles today, one is about Correa, one is about Buxton, and one is about relief pitchers. How would you order those on the front page?
I'm just looking for a little bit of sunshine.
Yeah,
I'm looking for a silver lining.
Bend over. There's a little bit of sunshine for you. Okay, Correa. We've talked about a lot. It's obvious from his performance. has been playing through plantar fasciitis in his left heel since May, essentially. I mean, basically the whole season. And he's just, especially offensively, has just never been right. I mean, he's never had more than like a 2-week stretch where he's looked like Carlos Correa at the plate. And for a while, we famously had this discussion with Dan Hayes, when he would have 7 good games, everyone would go, all right, here we go.
Right.
And it's like, well, no, there's no here we go here. This is a guy struggling through what people who have
debilitating pain
often described as like a feeling of knives in your heel, basically, when you're just walking around or whatever. And so within that, I guess I give him credit for, I mean, he's a damn Iron Man given that.
Right, yes.
He's played, I think, 135 of the first 150 games or something like that. Right. Now, has that helped? I don't know. I mean, we talked about this a lot with playing through injuries, which is defensively, he's been actually, I would say, remarkably solid.
Yeah, right.
I think agree. Of late, though, he's made 2 or 3 plays where you go, yeah, I wonder if he makes that play if he's healthy. He almost, to me, looks like he's kind of attempting to field balls without just bending down straight on, because I'm guessing that puts more stress on the heels.
Maybe.
And he's kind of circle balls and field them off to the side, which when it works, no one cares. But there's been a couple plays where, that's not how they teach you to do it. I'm sure that's not how Carlos Correa would teach his sons to do it, but he's trying to do what he can. But offensively, it hasn't happened for him. I mean, he hasn't even had a good month at any point this season. Obviously, he's got the 30 double plays, in part because he has been not as able to elevate the ball.
Right.
And he's significantly slower because of this heel injury, and he wasn't fast to begin with. Right. And so
he hits the ball hard on the ground and he's slow to first base.
Guaranteed double play every time he hits a ground ball with a guy on first base. And so the end result of his season, which is now potentially over the regular season, there's a window for him to come back for, I think, the last 2 games in Colorado. Okay. We'll see if they view that as important or if they just going to throw him right into the playoff lineup. But he, one of the things we talked about, and I know some people think this seems absurd, but this, again, is what I've been told over and over by people who've had this and by medical folks, is this is not an injury, plantar fasciitis, that goes away with weeks of rest, typically. It's an injury that you hope goes away with months of rest, but it's a very unpredictable injury. And, would it have been better for the Twins to give him another 10 days off over the course of the last 3 or 4 months? Maybe. I mean, we can sit here and say production-wise it wouldn't have been worse. But actually what ended up happening once they kind of quasi-clinched the division a couple weeks ago, they did give him quite a few days off.
He gave a couple days.
He sat 3 days in a row where he didn't pinch hit.
Right.
He also had a couple other games off. They also removed him early from a couple games. And he was saying about 3 hours before he re-aggravated the injury, this is as good as I felt, in 3 months.
Right.
But one of the other things that people have told me throughout this about this injury is it doesn't matter how good you feel on that day, unless you feel like it's gone.
One twist and suddenly
it's not even the weird thing about this, and this is, I think, what has frustrated people who've had it, which includes Baldelli, Correa. I mean, there's a lot of examples. The frustrating thing is there's some days you feel better than others, but it's not as if you go, this is gone. Until it's months, it's not gone. And then the other frustrating thing is it's not always, I ran really hard to first base and I tweaked it. Right. That can happen. But as we saw with Correa, the play that actually caused him to now go on the IL with this for the first time this season, he just kind of, didn't sprint, just sort of jogged back on a ball in short left field.
Right. Yeah.
Shortstop handles 100% of the time and just stepped wrong, or not even wrong, just stepped. And his foot just went, nope. Now you're back to square run. And in fact, I don't want to get too specific just because I don't know anything about this medically, but it sounds like he tore through, I don't know, it's not a ligament, it's like the padding or whatever, which sounds terrible. Except that's actually potentially a good thing with plantar fasciitis.
Sometimes when you get the pop of plantar fasciitis, it gets over
tear, and then it's like, all right, now we're at least through to the other side here.
Right.
We can. I read up on it. It increases blood flow once there's a tear. It increases some of the healing properties. Now that's not going to mean that all of a sudden 10 days off are going to magically allow him. So, but the hope with him now, and he of course seems, as Dan Hayes would say, very confident that he'll be in the playoff lineup. I do,
and as fact Carlos Correa said,
yes,
he's very confident.
But But, he was very confident about his hitting in May, and look how that turned out. 90, I think he has a 93 OPS plus or something like that for the season. But I do believe he'll be in the playoff lineup. That, to me, is not in question. For the same reason he's played pretty much every day for the past 4 or 5 months. He's proven that he is willing to and, physically at least able to play through this. The question for me, so he'll take the 10 days off. He's on the IL. I think that's smart. There's no reason for him to play these games, obviously.
Yep.
And then either return for a game or two at the end in Colorado or just say, who cares? I'll just jump right into the game one lineup for the playoffs. But, that's not, to me, the question. The question is just like, what version of Correa are we getting?
Of course.
Is it just what I suspect will be, at best, the version of him we've gotten over the last 4 or 5 months, which is not a bad player, but not a guy who should be batting in the middle of a lineup for a playoff team?
Right.
Or will it actually be even worse because he has aggravated it and this is more significant than it was a month ago? And so,
or will it be better because it popped and you got some rest?
And he got some rest. It's impossible to know. I don't even think he knows. This is one of the more unpredictable injuries.
Yep.
And so, again, though, if he's not available, well, then all of a sudden you're starting Farmer at short, which means Farmer's not in the mix at third.
Right.
But I do think he'll be available. Now, what happens if game one he goes back on a ball and he aggravates it again? Does he come out of the game or does he just continue to try through it? So I think this is it's been tricky all season, but it's really gotten pretty tricky now. And it's unfortunate. Again, the timing of it is not great. But I don't know. I think, again, you would go, well, what about Brooks Lee? Well, I don't know that Brooks Lee is one of the 3 best shortstops on the Twins roster, even if they were to call him up defensively at least.
Yes, right.
I think it's unlikely. But, if Royce were to be ruled out for the playoffs and Carlos Correa were to be ruled out for the playoffs and Byron Buxton were to be ruled out for the playoffs, which we're going to get
then
to.
all bets are off.
Then, they're going to need something.
Right.
They're going to need Austin Martin or Brooks Lee or somebody.
Right.
So, yeah, that's...
Or Trevor Larnach, who got called up.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a very good shortstop.
No.
Yeah, Trevor Larnach got called up just because he was on the 40-man roster, and I don't know. Why not? So that's the Correa situation. That is not good news. There's not sunshine for you. And then the next one is Buxton, who played a rehab game, restarted his rehab assignment last night with the Saints, played DH for 7 innings, I want to say. Went 1 for 4 with a single and 2 strikeouts. Wasn't much of a single, but I'll just call it a single. I watched it. The Saints season, and so that was his first game action since September 1st.
Right.
When he left, he paused his initial rehab assignment. The Saints season ends Sunday.
Yeah. They got 3 games left.
They have 3 games left. And, the Twins' MO with Buxton or just with rehabbers in general has been like, you play your first game, you take the next game off. You play your second game, maybe you try to play back-to-back. Well, there isn't really any room for that.
Right.
Like, you can do that once, basically, and then Sunday
he could have today off and he plays Saturday and Sunday.
Right. Potentially. I think this is just a question that's just kind of going to very obviously answer itself, really, which is he's either able to play 2 of the next 3 games, and whatever the last one of those games, if it's Sunday, he's either going to come out of that, play the full game, come out of it and say, I feel fine, or he's going to get removed from one of these games or come out of it saying, I don't feel fine, in which case the whole playoff roster discussion is a moot point. I do think if he says he's fine and he's able to, satisfy whatever they want to see physically from him during these rehab games, he will be on the playoff roster. But
he'll certainly be playing next week with the Twins, I would think. Like he'll be playing.
I don't know about that. I mean, he might play a couple games.
Well,
but from a roster standpoint, they're motivated to delay these decisions with a lot of these guys returning because who gets sent down? We're going to get
Trevor
to
Larnach in this case. Or Royce Lewis goes on the IL.
Well, right, but then what? Okay, if Correa comes back for the last 2 games of the season, who gets sent down? You're getting to a spot where guys who you're going to want on the playoff roster, you're going to send them down for a day or 2.
Right.
And especially, not so much with the lineup, but as we talk about in a minute here, the more sunshiny bullpen guys, they're going to run into some tricky decisions here with the bullpen.
No, I agree with you on the bullpen.
Because you're adding 2 or 3 arms to a bullpen that has already been sort of pruned a little bit in terms of optionable guys. So, I mean, if Buxton plays Sunday and he's fine, I don't know that they're just going to have him not do anything until game 1 of a playoff.
Right.
But I don't think you're going to see him play that much the last week of the season, basically, because why are you using those both? I mean, he can barely get through. You're just trying to kind of get him to the
I think
to the show, basically.
I think they want both him and them to gain some confidence in his ability to actually perform in the playoff roster.
Yeah.
I'll be surprised if we don't see him with a lot of at-bat, a fair number, like four starts in those last 6 games.
Oh, I'll take the under on that. I mean, I'll take the under on Byron Buxton starting 4 of 6 games at any point for the rest of his life, basically. And I think I'll do pretty well on that. I mean, if you'd have taken that bet for the last 7 years, I'd be like Elon Musk money at this point. But second only to betting against the Twins in the playoffs in terms of get-rich schemes. So that's where he's at. I think, who does he push off a playoff roster? If he's on a playoff roster. Now, it had been Stevenson, basically, except now they've designated for assignment Jordan Luplow,
right?
Which I was honestly pretty surprised to see,
too. Yeah.
Because he fills a role that they had just left unfilled until acquiring him,
right?
And he's filled the role perfectly decently.
Yeah.
Like he's got, 7-something OPS,
right.
700-something OPS. He's hit lefties.
Did he stay with like he go down to St. Paul or anything? Yeah, I know he was designated for assignment.
I think today will be the...
okay.
I'm assuming he won't get claimed because he's not even eligible for the playoffs.
Right.
Which, by the way, he could clear waivers, get sent to AAA, and then get re-added to the playoff roster if they wanted because he's in the organization. I believe that's true. I'm not 100% sure. So I was surprised to see that. And now you say, well, if Luplow's gone, Chrissy just handed me a bunch of money. Thank you, Chrissy. You still owe me like $10,000.
I'm totally sure what this is for.
No, it's from me.
What is that? Oh, the ladies. Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a code word for me. I'm the lady.
Got it.
But now that you drop Luplow, and he's a right-handed outfield bat,
right?
Well, that could just be Buxton,
right?
Basically, and you could still have Stevenson as your pinch runner extraordinaire in the playoffs.
Correct.
Now that requires Buxton being able to play the outfield, whether it's center or a corner spot. But if all you were going to use Luplow for was one pinch hit at bat against a left-handed reliever in the 7th inning of a playoff game, well, Buxton can attempt to do that, certainly. And he's a better hitter, if healthy, than Luplow. Particularly now you have Michael Taylor back, which is the return that led to Luplow getting DFA'd. You have Willie Castro, who seems a lot more comfortable in center field after getting quite a few reps out there in place of Taylor over the last couple of weeks. Stevenson obviously can also play center field. He might be their second best center fielder. So I don't know. If Buxton makes it through the rehab and however many games, if any, he plays for the Twins down the stretch, I do think he will be on the playoff roster. If he's physically capable, I believe he'll be on the, and that means different things for him than some other people. I'll believe he'll be on the playoff roster, but the role he'll be in, I think, will be a lot closer to like what Jordan Luplow's role would have been than what you might have imagined Byron Buxton's role would have been like coming into the season or, midway through the season.
I think that's right. I think there'll definitely be a reduced role at best, right?
If Correa is out or Lewis is out, well, then all bets are off there because then they just got to make a lineup.
That's right.
And so then he's DH, Julian's at second, Polanco's at, who knows at that stage. But, okay. So, and then also in rehab limbo is Gordon and Gallo,
right?
Who are playing in St. Paul.
I've forgotten about Gallo.
But, let's just be nice and say they're not in a huge rush to get either of those guys back necessarily.
Right.
Gordon could enter the fray depending on some of these other injuries just because he can play multiple positions and all that. Gallo, I have a hard time seeing how or why he would be on the playoff roster necessarily. But they're both rehabbing, so theoretically they could be activated. I don't know what the moves would be to get them onto the active roster at that point for the last. By the way, this really, we knew this already, but it's such a shame that Jose Miranda ended up having just a lost season.
Right.
Because
he would be great at third base right now, right-handed.
Or he'd be the right-handed portion of a first base or DH platoon. Right. He would solve a lot of issues for them if he was the guy we saw last year, not the guy we saw this year, obviously. So that's unfortunate. Okay, now I have some sunshinier ones, theoretically. But first...
yeah, let's talk a little bit about Hatch.
Speaking of sunshine, it's better to be. Here's Hatch's theory: it's better to be woken up by sunshine, even simulated
Even if you're
sunshine.
Aaron Gleeman.
Yes.
Who
Mr.
abhors
Sunshine,
sunshine.
they call me. Then just the beep, beep, beep of a horrible alarm. And I think that's largely true just to start your day. It's better than that. And so Hatch's thing is the Hatch Restore 2 is your bedside sleep guide.
Yes.
The innovative all-in-one dream machine, they call it.
That's right.
It's basically a light and alarm clock. It looks good. It doesn't look like an alarm clock. They sent us one, and I've used it. It allows you to kind of rest. You can use it as
it's not just
sound machine,
it doesn't
like
just
white
wake you up
noise
and
machine.
also put you to sleep.
Right.
Yeah,
It kind of sets the mood in the room from a light and sound perspective, which I often find helpful. And then when it comes time to wake up, if you don't like just being awoken by the worst sound in the world, it can kind of gradually awaken you by putting a little more light or a little more sound into the room so that you can kind of wake up naturally.
Yeah, it's not just, it's trying to make you form some healthy habits around your sleeping. Like, it'll teach your body when it's time to sleep and when it's time to rise with light and sound cues. So your body kind of gets used to that stuff. It coaches you through meditations and mindfulness exercises that transform the time before and after sleep into sort of getting into the restful space.
And our listeners can get $20 off their purchase of a Hatch Restore 2, and they'll give you free shipping along with that. You go to hatch.co, not com, hatch.co/Gleeman. You can sleep deeply and wake gently with the Restore 2. Just go to hatch.co/Gleeman. Get your $20 off. Get the free shipping. That's Hatch, HATCH, hatch.co/Gleeman.
I know we've had a lot of people, second sponsor is, a lot of people have taken us up on our offer for Game Time because, frankly, I've heard from a lot of people, hey, I want to make sure I want to get $20 off my first tickets with Game Time. Game Time isn't like a website where you're marketing tickets. It's an app. You download the Game Time app and you go out there and they have got tickets for the latest games, latest concerts, etc. If you were wise enough to not take advantage of this offer up to this point, you still can do so, and you can do so for this stretch run and for the playoffs.
Their specialty, they say, is hard to find tickets, which playoff games would probably qualify, and last minute tickets. Yeah. And by last minute, they mean like if you're walking to Target Field, pull up the Game Time app on your phone, a couple of clicks later.
I have bought them from the Bricksworth patio.
Yes, you can get tickets. And as John mentioned, you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets, download the Game Time app on your phone, create an account, and then just use the code Gleeman. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but you just create an account on the Game Time app. You redeem the code GLEEMAN, and you get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Seems like a good thing to do if you want to get down there and watch a team clinch.
Sure,
maybe jump into that Game Time. It's a good idea to save yourself $20 on doing that.
You can. I don't know. Will they kick you out at Target Field if the Twins lose tonight and you're waiting for the Detroit game to go final? I
don't know.
In the West Coast,
I don't know what the plan is on that.
We'll get into the press box. You can take a nap into the press box. That's open.
If they don't clinch today, like if things don't work on that, they have to wait until a late night tomorrow too. Like the Twins have a game. Day game on Saturday after. Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
One of the ways to do it is to beat one of the worst teams in the league. You could just go ahead and do that, and you don't even have to look at anything else ever in your entire life. You don't have to think about Cleveland or Detroit ever again until February, March. Actually, April probably. Okay, so that's the position player side of the injury front, which, as we just joked about, not a lot of sunshine there.
Right.
There's some uncertainty that couldn't turn into sunshine, but just generally speaking, three of the Twins' best players are very much in flux right now from a health standpoint. From the pitching side, it's a little bit sunnier, although not yet. It's just theoretically a little bit sunnier.
Yeah, we'll get to see some people here soon.
Right, but they got to actually perform.
Yep.
So Brock Stewart has, I believe, completed his rehab assignment. Actually, Stewart, Chris Paddack, and Jorge Alcala, from a health standpoint, have been cleared to return, which means now it's just a baseball and roster decision.
Right.
When do we want to add them? How many of them do we want to add? Because, like I said, they're bumping people from the roster at a pretty key time in the season. So Stewart pitched Friday and then Tuesday for the Saints. 2 scoreless innings, bunch of strikeouts, throwing 97 and 99. Looked very much like the guy
Brock
we
Stewart
saw in the first half, who was one of the Twins' best pitchers.
That's good news.
And so that would be huge. how often he pitches down the stretch, who knows? I would guess it's once every 2 or 3 days, so maybe 2 or 3 appearances down the stretch because they want to not use up any bullets here, but they want to, make sure he's ready to go. That would be a massive addition to the bullpen. Yep. So much so that, maybe he doesn't jump back into the number 1 setup spot that he had held in June when he got hurt, but he could.
Yeah.
At the very least, he becomes part of, the core 4 or 5 guys that you're going to use 7,
Bar, Pagan, maybe Jax.
Right. Getting from the starters to Duran, basically.
Right.
Chris Paddack also pitched well in his last rehab outing. He topped out at like 97 or 98, I think, which is very hard for him.
Right?
I don't mean difficult. I just mean that's very fast for him.
Yes.
95 would have been pretty good. But he did tell us when he first came back a couple weeks ago, he was at Target Field. He's like, I honestly, I know this is a cliche. I'm throwing harder than ever. I feel better than ever. I'm like, okay, let's see it. Well, we saw it.
I think he referred to something like 97 mile per hour fastball. And we're all like, really? What gun is that? Yeah.
I think the role, he's going to be activated too. I don't know. Honestly, these could be as soon as tonight, some of these activations on the pitching side. I suspect he will be used more kind of like Louis Varland is going to be used, which is the first guy out of the pen for more than 3 outs usually.
Right.
So starter leaves after 5 or before that, obviously. Brock Stewart is going to be used for 1 inning late in the game. Paddack and Louis Varland are, I guess, closer to like long relievers than setup man in terms of usage, but they're not like 3 to 5 inning guys. They're more like you come in after 5, you pitch the 6th and into the 7th, or maybe the 6th and the 7th, and then you hand it over to the Stewarts and the Pagans and the Thielbars of the world. I think that's the role they would envision for Paddack here, which means you might only see him twice down the stretch because he's going to need a little extra time off. He's also 16 months removed from his second Tommy John surgery. So, again, expectations here need to be held in check, even if the velocity looked good on the rehab. But that could be a very impactful move. Yeah. And here's the other thing. We're so focused on playoffs, rightfully so. Having him and Varland available to kind of bridge the gap from an early starter exit or just a normal-ish starter exit to the setup guys could be huge. We've seen in past playoffs when those guys are Cody Stashak or when those guys are, I don't want to rip anybody, but the game can be lost before it's even.
It's not uncommon that even a really good starter gets into the meat grinder of a play. You're facing the Astros lineup and you're throwing 20 pitches an inning, 20, 25 pitches an inning to kind of get through this, to wind your way through
just
something
to get
like
through
that.
4 or 5.
Yeah, you get through 4 innings and you're at 85, 90 pitches and you're facing the lineup a third time. It's like, kind of like to have somebody else in for this, and
I think
now they might have at least one option in Varland and potentially a second option in Paddack. That's not to mention maybe Maeda, maybe somebody like that.
But then the other thing with Paddack is they've signed him to a long-term extension, and with Gray and Maeda free agents, he's certainly at the very least penciled into next year's rotation, and. Him finishing on a high note, maybe having a playoff appearance or 2 where he looks good, he can go into a full off season and then kind of try to ramp up. I suspect he'd be at some kind of innings limit for next year, obviously. But that's huge too. Just what Twins fans haven't really gotten a good look at Chris Paddack.
No.
He made 5 starts. He actually looked pretty
really
good
in those 5
starts. But it was so short lived. But Chris Paddack, when healthy, now the problem is when healthy has been few and far between for Chris Paddack in his career. Right. But Chris Paddack, when healthy, is certainly a middle of the rotation caliber pitcher with the potential to potentially be more. Yeah. It's not a good not good phrasing. And then the last guy is Jorge Alcala, who was 97, I think, in his last rehab. It's possible he gets activated. I just think he would be 3rd on the pecking order, not because of health, but just because of they have less trust in, even if he is healthy, than those other 2 guys. Like, even a healthy Jorge Alcala might not have been in a late inning mix. And he's more of a 1 inning guy too, obviously. They've bumped Bailey Ober back into the rotation by, now this is the 3rd flip-flop between these 2 pitchers, Ober and Dallas Keuchel. Yep. Now, Ober is back in the rotation. Keuchel is in the bullpen. Right. And, there's still time for another 3, 4, or 5 flips between these 2. But I'm curious where this goes to, because I think if you activate Stewart and Paddack, who are you, and maybe Alcala, but certainly Stewart and Paddack, who are you dropping from the active roster? Here are the possibilities. You tell me.
I've got 3 possibilities. Let's see what you think. And I got my top 2.
Dylan Floro.
Yep. I think that's one of them.
Josh Winder. And
I
think
think that's number 2.
With Winder, you'd just be optioning him back to the minors.
That's right.
Funderburk, although I think they like Funderburk, and he's pitched well other than that one game against Cleveland here.
Yeah.
And if you want a second lefty in the playoffs, he's it.
Right.
Or Keuchel.
Right.
Like, what purpose is Keuchel serving if he's not going to be on the playoff roster, other than just veteran presence, obviously? Now, you can't option him to the minors. You're just releasing him, and that might be it for his career. But, Keuchel has filled the role in that I think they are 4-2 in his starts or something like that.
Sure.
I mean, some of that's based on run support and everything. Sure. But I feel like we were largely right about Keuchel in that he is sort of cooked.
Yeah.
He's got a 5.5 ERA.
4th or 5th starter.
I mean,
right. Maybe 5th.
He's got an ERA near 6. He has, I think he had 18 strikeouts and 14 walks. But the variance of his performance sort of hid that for a little bit or pushed that to the back burner because overall he's got an ERA near 6. You would go, well, that's about what we expected. He's cooked. Except out of his, 7 or 8 appearances,
I was gonna say,
2 of them have been amazing. And they happen to come at times when
really only like 2 of them have been awful. Like the one in Philadelphia was just absolute horse crap. Like, and it's bouncing back from that, it's going to be a hard to impact on your ERA.
Yeah, he also had 2 bad ones here.
Okay.
The most recent start that got him bumped wasn't good. I mean, yes, he didn't get rocked more than a couple of times, but he's got a 5.75 ERA or whatever. I'm going to tell you, most of the starts didn't go that well. And so I can't imagine the Twins using him in a playoff game, even as a reliever. I would certainly, if you want a second lefty, and you actually want that lefty not just to be a break glass in case of emergency long reliever, which we've discussed I don't think has that much value in the playoffs. If you actually want it to be someone who might be called upon to get a key left-handed batter out in the 6th inning, let's say, Funderburk to me is an easy choice. I'm not like some huge Cody Funderburk supporter or anything, but I just think he has a much better shot from a stuff perspective than Keuchel. And so I would say if you're in a roster crunch here, and you're talking about ditching guys and saying goodbye to Floro and all this stuff. I mean, I would have no problem cutting Floro either, but you might need 3 spots if you're going to activate Alcala.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think Keuchel has done the job they needed him to do. It hasn't always been pretty, but he's gotten through it. He's filled the space that they needed to be filled, but they don't need a space filler anymore, really. And so I wonder if could be the
line. I mean, I think, to me, I don't know that you necessarily have to make room for Alcala. I don't know what you've got there, right? So the 2 spots I think are Floro and Winder.
Right.
I think Winder's a no-brainer because you keep him in the organization. I think, to me, Floro's also a no-brainer, but I'm not sure that they necessarily feel that way because they're so hesitant to give up on an asset that they potentially could use at some point. I don't see that asset being any better than the guys that are available to replace him right now.
Right.
And so then if you do need a third person, if there's a question of Funderburk versus Keuchel.
I mean, honestly, you could do Ober too.
Well, you could.
Potentially. Now, the timing of it gets a little tricky. You'd have to figure out what you want to do with that. Right. But okay. So that's where we're at. That wasn't a ton of sunshine. It could be sunshine, but we got to see. I mean, it's
of things that we're going to watch in the last meaningless week.
Yes.
How the bullpen usage is done and how the bullpen actually performs is something I'm going to pay a lot of attention to. Like that is literally 2 weeks ago. That was our biggest concern. Now I think we got bigger concerns now.
Yeah, that always happens,
right? But potentially this is a much deeper and much better bullpen than we were afraid we had when Jax was blowing up back in early September.
Well, I mean, here's the reality. It has to be.
Right.
Because if it's not, they're not going anywhere.
Right.
And if Stewart is not himself or gets re-injured or Paddack is not able to fill a role and Louis Varland looks the part of an overmatched rookie or something like that, and all of a sudden it's the 8th inning and Emilio Pagan's out there, and if that doesn't go well, or if Jack's second half struck,
it's funny how long we've had this conversation about how we can go through each of the bullpen guys and go big pivot. there's a wide variance on
Yes.
what we can expect on this. We've been doing it since February 15th.
Yes,
right?
and I mean I wrote this at the time of the trade deadline, which they did nothing to address the bullpen. They did nothing at the trade deadline period, other than the Floro move, 10 days earlier or whatever. But they specifically did nothing to address the bullpen. And my headline at the time was basically, that's fine. I disagree with that. I think that's a mistake. I think you agreed with me that it was a mistake. But okay, that's what you've chosen. There's nowhere to hide now if this bullpen is part of the problem in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yep.
Obviously if Duran blows a save or something, that's different. But if the setup caliber guys struggle here in the playoffs, there's nowhere to hide from that.
All right, so
There's a good place to end it.
That's
Nice
a good-
cliffhanger. Will the bullpen be good or horrible?
that's right.
Thank you to, let's see, Bricksworth,
Bricksworth.
Game Time,
Yep.
Stamps.com, and
Hatch.
Hatch.
Yeah, for your good night's sleep.
Thank you to all you guys for listening all season.
Check
and
out the Patreon.com.
consider Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. We would love to have you join us for the stretch run and the playoffs. We think you will enjoy it. If you've made it this far into this episode, I can tell you certainly you will enjoy the Patreon episodes, and it'll push us to 4,000.
I would also say celebrate this weekend. If the Twins
Sure.
end up clinching this weekend, go on ahead and celebrate. I saw some people, a little crabby odds. How big of a thing is it to win this division, etc. How about you just again let a little sunshine into your life? Go enjoy yourself on the clinch.
I'm the biggest, crabbiest person of all time, but even I'm
have
willing
yourself
to.
a toast or something. Jump up and down with your kids. Go have fun.
Yeah, feel free to celebrate things you accomplish in life. It's okay. It doesn't make you like a bad person or
That's
anything.
right. Yeah.
So if you join the Patreon, we'll see you Monday morning.
Yep.
If you don't join the Patreon, we'll see you back here Friday.
That's right.
You'll just miss so much. But that's the price you don't pay. See you guys.
Bye. Gleeman.